Hello, my name is Daniel Morris and welcome to today's session on English for specific purposes. Today, I would like to focus more specifically on developing communication skills and professional skills inside the ESP classroom. As teachers, we know that communication is already a well-established goal in English language teaching and also in ESP. What I'd like to do today is focus on how we can build effective communication skills and professional skills simultaneously. As teachers, this means being able to understand the communicative needs of our students and being able to also understand some of the professional skills that are essential, even for success in today's modern world. So what I'd like to do first is talk a little bit about global communication. Given the international nature of the 21st century workplace, there has to be some kind of common or global international language for communication, which nowadays, of course, is English. According to the Harvard Business Review of 2012, 1.75 billion people now speak English to a sufficient level worldwide, or able to use English sufficiently in their job, in education, online, or using social media, for example. That's 1 in 4 people using English for communication. Furthermore, English is also the dominant language in 60 countries now and has become the preferred language for communication in international business. In fact, in 2012, many international companies, such as Renault, Samsung, Nokia, they made English their primary language for communication in business. So all of their employees were using English to communicate in their day-to-day working lives. Now, given all of this information, it's no surprise to us then, as ESP teachers, that our ESP instruction has become more and more centered around communication. But what does communication mean exactly? What kinds of communication skills should we be developing with our ESP learners? In the 21st century, we have a wide range of communication tools at our disposal, but all of these different tools can actually fall into 3 main communication methods. These are the ones that we can see in front of us: verbal or face-to-face communication, written communication, or telephone communication. Now, your ESP learners may be needing to develop their skills in 1 or 2, or maybe a mixture of all 3 of these communicative areas. And as ESP teachers, it's important for us to understand the communicative needs of our learners and how they're going to use communication in their workplace in different situations. For example, if we're thinking about the business world or sales and marketing and finance, according to a 2020 study, the primary methods of communication in these vocations were email for talking to clients, and then with colleagues, chatting with email, but also a mixture of online tools, face-to-face communication, and even calls as well. Now, the methods of communication, of course, are going to vary from vocation to vocation. So it's important for us to identify different communicative tasks that our learners may need to perform inside the classroom. So having a look in a bit more detail now at verbal or face-to-face communication in the workplace. This might involve dealing with customers, for example, or coordinating with colleagues, attending business meetings or delivering presentations, conducting staff training, or even interviews for new staff members. Now, our ESP learners, they're going to have to use a lot of face-to-face communication tasks, but in very specific situations. For example, in plumbing, we may have learners that need to advise customers on the correct materials that they need to use to complete a project, for example. Or in dentistry, we may have staff members needing to use communication or face-to-face communication to train new members of staff on how to follow the correct health and safety guidelines or how to use the medical equipment correctly. When it comes to written communication, of course, the most common one would be emails, but this can also involve notices or announcements, perhaps some notes taken during a meeting, instructions or manuals that a lot of learners may have to use or even write themselves in their area of work, and also team messaging applications, things like WhatsApp or Viber for internal communication. And once again, our ESP learners will have to use these different written communication types in very specific situations. For example, in food service and catering, we may have learners that need to develop writing skills so that they can produce written announcements for example, changing the menu, changing the different foods on the menu and notifying the kitchen staff, for example. Could also include in computing, learners having to write manuals or instructions in their area of work to follow specific software or to use imaging correctly in design, for example, or in law even, perhaps using emails to prepare and gather legal documents. When it comes to calls, perhaps some similar tasks that we see with verbal or face-to-face communication. This could involve our learners potentially dealing with customers, dealing with colleagues, in distance meetings. We can also include their e-meeting platforms such as Skype or Zoom, and of course giving or asking for details with colleagues or customers and relaying and receiving instructions. And again, all taking place in very, very specific situations. Imagine, for example, in the field of aviation, we have a Japanese pilot that wants to request to land the plane in an airport that is situated in Peru, for example. And the Japanese pilot is going to have to communicate in English to the Peruvian air traffic controller some very precise details and instructions regarding their request to land, the time of arrival, and estimated distance to their arrival, all taking place in English. Perhaps a travel agent, for example, may also need to use English calls to inform customers about different holiday packages that they can offer. So taking all of these examples into account, I think the most important thing as ESP teachers is for us to be aware of the different communication needs of our students and be able to understand how our students are going to use communication in their workplace in very specific situations, as we've seen through the examples. And I think probably the best way to do this, to achieve this, is to conduct either a needs analysis at the beginning of the ESP course to determine what kind of communication types your learners will be using or are using currently, or to simply follow a tailored ESP course that's going to help develop these specific communication tasks. So just some ideas then to keep in mind when we are thinking about communication skills in ESP. So how about the professional skills then? Well, when it comes to professional skills in ESP or in general, I think it's important to understand that they can be broken down into two main types of professional skills. On one side, we have hard skills, and on the other side, we actually have soft skills. And it's important to differentiate between these different skill sets because while they're both very important for learners to develop, they include very, very different skills entirely. When we're talking about hard skills, for example, these are, of course, learnable, concrete skills, perhaps knowledge and even qualifications that are required to perform a specific job. Some examples of hard skills may include proficiency in a foreign language, a degree or a certificate, for example. If we think about chefs, a hard skill for a chef or a cook would, of course, be something like cooking skills. Somebody that is working in IT or in computer programming, a hard skill for them would be something like coding or Microsoft Office skills, for example. So hard skills basically allow us to perform the essential duties in our chosen vocation. On the other hand, we have soft skills, which are more orientated around personal attributes. They're also known as people skills or interpersonal skills, sometimes that can be used in every job. They are a set of transferable skills, is a term that's often used that people can use in different vocations. These include communication skills, critical thinking and problem solving, for example, being a good team leader, having a positive attitude, being able to work well as part of a team, having a positive work ethic, and being able to conduct yourself professionally and deal with some of the pressures of the working environment. Now, when it comes to hard skills, as we saw before, these can often be measured quite easily through qualifications or through experience. On the other hand, soft skills need to be developed through practice and fostered over time in the real world with other people primarily. And what's really interesting for employers right now is not so much the hard skills that learners are developing, but the soft skills that they can bring to a working environment, how they can interact with other people, how they can work as part of a team, how they can solve problems and perhaps communicate using a wide range of different communication tools. This is an interesting study about soft skills and the impact of soft skills in the workplace by the University of Harvard. It found that 85% of job success came from having well-developed soft skills alone. And only 15% of job success actually came from having the hard skills. So something else to consider. I think it's very well established that soft skills play a very important role in employability and in overall job performance and success. And Daniel Goleman, in his book about emotional intelligence, I think he put this perfectly. In a high IQ job pool where there's plenty of qualifications, a lot of shared knowledge and skills, what is really going to distinguish employers is their ability to demonstrate soft skills, to communicate effectively, to show drive, empathy, and be able to work effectively as part of a team, as part of a unit. And really, the proof of this, as we say in English, the proof is in the pudding. When I was presenting or when I was researching for this particular topic, I looked at a lot of job advertisements online, and I found three very different job advertisements, one for a marketing job at an international retail company, another one in as a stockroom manager at a very, very famous sports brand, and another job as a designer at a leading car manufacturer. And we can just see in all three job advertisements, the soft skills are the most prominent here. In the basic qualifications, in our key requirements and skills, we can see a large variety of soft skills required. Our candidates need to be self-motivated, team players. They need to demonstrate communication skills, be able to manage a team, have attention to detail, a natural sense of urgency, creativity, and be collaborative in their work. So this is really the evidence, the hard evidence of the importance of soft skills, and something that we shouldn't really overlook in our ESP teaching, this integration of different skills with our learners. So then, how can we develop communication skills and soft skills simultaneously? One of the ways that we can achieve this, of course, is through English for Specific Purposes, or ESP. Through ESP instruction, this actually gives us a lot of advantages. First of all, being in the classification of ESP. We can see here that ESP actually covers a broad range of different learners, different vocations, different skill sets, and different expertise as well. If you're an ESP teacher, you may have come across many of these different terms before. We have English for academic purposes, can be used with trainees or people studying in vocational colleges. They are not experts yet. They are developing their expertise in order to go into a chosen field or profession. At the same time, we can also develop skills with people who are already professionals using English for occupational purposes. These are people that want to simply acquire English communication skills in their profession. They already have the experience, they already have the skills, but they may need to add this extra English communication to help them or enhance their abilities at work. So in all of these different branches of ESP, our learners are studying English language, of course, linguistic skills, communication skills, and professional skills, and developing them simultaneously. Now, according to Dudley Evans and St. John, ESP is highly effective in helping our learners develop very specific skills because it wastes no time. It focuses exactly on what our learners needs in terms of communication or topic-specific vocabulary, for example. At the same time, it makes use of underlying methodologies or realistic activities that help our learners to acquire real-life soft skills or technical skills that they're going to use in their chosen vocation. And if implemented right or in the right way, it can be highly successful in importing all of the knowledge, hard and soft skills required for any kind of chosen vocation. This is why ESP can help facilitate our classes. Something I'd also like to mention in terms of ESP features, in terms of an ESP course also offers a lot in terms of specificity and authenticity. An ESP course uses purposeful language that's targeted at very specific learners. As we saw in the beginning of the presentation, we saw different groups of learners using communication for very specific targets, for a very specific goal. And specificity in ESP allows us to use a lot of specific and meaningful language to facilitate this process. On the other hand, with authenticity, this allows ESP courses to allow learners to interact with meaningful, realistic content from the real world, from outside, to develop realistic skills, soft skills, or communication skills. So when we're looking at specificity, for example, we have three different vocations here: engineering, law, hotels, and catering. We can see we're all going to be writing an email today, but through different communication goals. Each profession has a different communication goal, and our topic-specific vocabulary that we introduce allows us to achieve our communicative goal in each area. So in engineering, perhaps that is explaining a design choice. In law, perhaps that's writing some kind of legal agreement. Or in hotels and catering, writing an email to a customer to make a correction or amend some kind of reservation that the customer has with the hotel. In terms of authenticity, we can use authentic communication settings, authentic communicative situations. For example, in computing, two employees talking about a problem with a computer virus and how to deal with this problem. We have here realistic communicative situations, functional language in context, and we can, as teachers, adapt this material for our classes. So what I'd like to do with you now is to look at how we can apply some of this methodology, some of these ideas practically inside an ESP course or inside an ESP lesson. In today's lesson in particular, we're going to be looking at ESP for nursing, medical professions. We have a communicative goal today. Our communicative goal is to bring up a sensitive topic, and more specifically, we're going to be helping our learners to give nutritional advice to patients. So we imagine a nurse trying to give some advice to a patient on how to change their diet because they're having some health problems, and help them to work through a proper nutritional plan. In order to do this, the nurse is going to need a lot of different soft skills. Here are some of them here. For example, they're going to need to communicate both verbally and through written forms. They're going to need to display a positive attitude, confidence. They're going to need to inform the patient with a lot of confidence, a lot of professionalism and empathy to help the patient see that they need to change their diet and help them to feel good about their decision to change their diet as well. So this is the communicative goal that we're going to be working with. And these are some of the soft skills that we hope to achieve in our lesson. So beginning our lesson, we may want to introduce some topic-specific vocabulary. A warm-up activity helps our learners to become familiar with the topic-specific vocabulary, use the topic-specific vocabulary that they're going to be needing later for communicative purposes. So talking about the different sources of vitamins or minerals that you can find in different food groups. For example, using visual presentation of vocabulary to help the learners acquire these lexical items. Moving on, we can see here we have some authentic materials available for the learners. So our next part of the lesson, we're reading an article about nutrition, the benefits of different vitamins that you can find in different foods, with a pre-reading activity for our learners to discuss the purpose of following a healthy lifestyle, how our eating habits can affect our health, and how that they can actually help patients to get a proper nutrition. So here our learners are going to be discussing again some of the key topic-specific vocabulary. They're also going to be discussing the communication goals. They're going to be thinking about the correct ways to inform patients of how to follow a healthy nutritional diet. Moving on then to the next part of the lesson, communication models, as we mentioned earlier, are essential in helping to develop with our learners useful, meaningful, and realistic language and skills. Here we can see a conversation between a real patient and a real nurse in a realistic situation that we could find inside a hospital. Here we have some exposure to soft skills in content. In the text, we can find different phrases to, for example, to express polite recommendations, empathy, and giving advice at the same time. We may also want to expose our students to the natural language in context through audio or visual materials. For example, here.
John, before we finish your checkup, there's something we should discuss.
What's that?
Your weight gain. You understand the risks of obesity, don't you?
I do, yeah. I know my weight is getting out of hand.
You need to change your diet drastically and exercise more. John, before we finish your checkup, there's...
So, in this particular situation, our learners can become familiarized with the useful expressions, the tone, the register of the nurse as they are communicating with the patient. So using real-life communication models, we can help our learners to develop or begin developing effective communication skills. And this can then allow us to help our learners to start performing some of these communication tasks. For example, through speaking tasks. In this particular activity, our learners are going to be performing a similar conversation to the one we have just seen. One of the students is going to be the nurse, the other student is going to be a patient, and the nurse is going to talk to the patient about their health problems, their diet, and suggest how they can change their diet to make them feel better overall. And through speaking, this also allows us to develop a range of different soft skills in this realistic situation. For example, oral communication skills and listening skills, listening to the potential problems of the patient, critical thinking, decision-making, and problem-solving skills on behalf of the nurse. They need to think about how to help the patient in terms of their nutrition. They may need to also develop or demonstrate some negotiating skills. The patient may not like what the nurse is suggesting, so the nurse needs to be able to give reasoning and deliver their reasoning with a lot of confidence and professionalism that all comes under customer care and making sure that the patients are well looked after. So these are a lot of different soft skills that we can develop through this particular communicative task. Now, as teachers, we can also offer extra support to our learners to help them confront and perform well in this communication task. Of course, using the models, referring back to our language models, we may want to extract useful language, for example, useful phrases and mind maps that help us and help our learners put together their conversations, understand the natural flow of the language, and be able to become more competent speakers. Now, perhaps a natural progression for this particular conversation would then be for the nurse to make some notes to then pass to the doctor for some suggestions for the patient going forward. So a speaking activity transforming into another communicative activity through the writing. So in this particular activity, we have some recommended diet changes. Our nurses are going to be, or our learners even, are going to be writing some notes about the conclusion of their conversation with the patient. So again, developing a range of different soft skills here in terms of written communication, critical thinking and decision making. They're writing down the solutions that they found, or the resolvement of the problem with their learners, as well as negotiating skills and teamwork. They're passing on information to the doctor, they're passing on information to other members of staff. So this all comes under teamwork skills at the same time. So what I wanted to do in this lesson was to show you through principled, scaffolded approaches, we can help our learners to develop highly effective communication skills and professional skills simultaneously. Through the speaking exercise, through the writing exercise, we were able to use realistic situations, realistic language, and soft skills to the learner's advantage. And what I'd like to kind of finish off by covering today, some points to take away from the session. I think in conclusion, I think it is very possible to develop communication skills and soft skills simultaneously. I think the key thing to remember is as much exposure for our learners as possible to real life situations, opportunities where they can learn and develop language realistically, purposefully, and meaningfully. You may want to, in your ESP classes, use a range of different communicative activities, perhaps involving problem solving, providing reasons and arguments for different solutions, for example, resolving conflicts, accepting and rejecting proposals, dealing with potential clients, and defining appropriate behavior at work. I think the more realistic that we can make our ESP classes, the more geared towards soft skills and communication they're going to be. So just a few ideas for you to take away. All of the materials that I've shown you today have come from our Career Paths series for English for Specific Purposes, available now. We have over 90 different vocations available in this very exciting, very expansive course. This course is also accompanied by the Express Digibooks application, which allows for online and offline use of the materials, which include a range of different interactive material, audio and visual content for our ESP learners. So thank you very much for your attention today, and thank you for inviting me to present at your event today. I wish you all the best with the academic year ahead. And if you want to get in contact with Express Publishing, you can find us at www.expresspublishing.co.uk. Thank you very much for listening.